States Marine Corps, in which our speaker served as an officer during the Vietnam era, if trouble ever came, his was the face you most want to see. He is also responsible for two of my favorite memories from my semester at SAS Florida, with me doing a poor impersonation of our speaker. It remains one of the greatest thrills of my life, in imitation of our speaker's pre-port tradition of thrice announcing our destination in his sonorous, booming voice, to have stepped up to the podium after our life-changing around-the-world voyage and been able to tell a roaring crowd, America tomorrow, America tomorrow, America tomorrow. My other memory, I count among my favorites, is what brings us here today, Lloyd's Story Hour. And so without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to welcome a man to whom generations of parents have entrusted their children to see the world, whom generations of students have been enriched by and comforted by. His hugs, which are some of the best in the business, do the trick every time. And a man to whom the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, certainly applies. As to semester at sea, he has been, since just about the birth of the program, ever faithful. Lloyd, go on.
I can hear you fine.
No.
No.
Yes, yes.
On now?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Leah. Far
Closer.
more generous than I
Closer.
deserve.
Closer.
A little closer.
Yeah.
I was first at Chapman. I was a professor of accounting. And I remember studying the best stocks in America. We're always cumulative and participating. You know, semester at sea is like that. We're cumulative and we're participating. Everything that's happened to this program has been on the shoulders of someone else. So I'm not here to talk about me at all today. I'd like to talk about the history of this program and all the great ones. There are so many that we could never mention, but the few that I will mention show you how absolutely significant this program has been because of you. Let me just say this, I'm old and I forget things, so forgive me if I goof up on some particular fact that you remember better than I. But Desmond Tutu taught us there is no future without forgiveness. So, 1877, they tried to run a floating university on a ship called the Ontario. It failed. 1901, a naval officer tried again, failed. 1920, another gentleman tried another ship on a Navy transport vessel, it failed. 1926 was the first time anyone was successful. That's how long ago Semester at Sea had its initial beginnings. A man named James Lloyd at New York University and one of his friends from Greece, Constantine Racis. They were able to put together a program and sail around the world for 7.5 months. And they called their organization United Travel Associates. And they had an old ship called the Rhindan. It was coal burning. It was 7.5 months they spent on that ship. They had a competing organization among their friends, which was called International University Cruises. From 1929 to 1936, they actually did 7 voyages of a program on a floating university. We have many, many famous people involved in this program. Each of us have met some of them. There are some on board now, but the earliest that I could research and find was that early 1926 voyage. Had run into Benito Mussolini, George Bernard Shaw, and Mahatma Gandhi. 1926. 1958 begins our particular involvement with this program. 1958, a guy named Bill Hughes, he was a businessman in Whittier, California. He was a member of Rotary. And he came and said, since we are international, we should do something. And the woman sitting next to me was Valerie Scudder. And Valerie Scudder was on the board of this University of Seven Seas program. And she and her 2 sons sailed on the first voyage, which they finally got off the ground in 1963. As you know, we have some from 63 here today, from that original voyage. We'll tell you a little bit about that one. It was wild. They barely made it, but they made it. But I'd like to stop and say probably the first person who deserves the credit for bringing this to the forefront of the Scudder family, which is well known in California. Valerie sailed on that 63 voyage with her 2 sons. They're both here now. Would you stand up, guys? He was 17. Their mom went around the world. We sat in class together. We took tests and measurements together, and she was the smart one. I was the dumb one, but we got to be dear, dear friends. The 7 Seas did not do that well. And then later on, I sailed with Valerie, who was the key person from my point of view, with her granddaughter who sits back there, who sailed with me. Come on, just one minute. They had financial difficulties. They weren't connected to a university. Valerie and Jack Scudder introduced them to Chapman College. And Valerie was a Chapman graduate, very, very much committed to the college. And she talked John Davis, the then president, into taking this thing on. Well, I happened to be around in those days. And I remember the vote. They barely took it on, let me tell you. If it hadn't been for the Scudder's influence, I don't think today we would have a semester at sea program. But they did sail in '63 on a ship called the MV 7 Seas, which was another Holland American vessel. It used to carry livestock. It was called a baby carrier. It had a flat top on it so they could take some planes. It was a piece of junk, forgive me. And barely it got through the months that it hit. But they did sail in '63. But that program stumbled, and so they came to Chapman in '65. Chapman took it on. Started a division called the University of 7 Seas, which my dear friend Ed Aldous and I had a major participatory part in. The guy who ran the program was a guy named Ned Worthington in those days, and he was a great leader of this program in those early days. And from '66 to '71, Holland American Line provided us a vessel known as the SS Rheindamm. She was about a 12,000 ship, those of you who sailed on her. She was a little bit better than the 7 Seas, but not perfect, as none of our ships have been. So Chapman College sailed on the Rheindamm from '66 to '71. Remember now, we're only using it for 2 semesters. The rest of the time, the ship used it as a passenger ship. What did that mean? That means we put our library in the ammunition cans and put them in the hold. They came back moldy the next semester. We take the furniture we use, which is this junk rattan furniture, that would go in the hole when the students were done, and up would come the good stuff. We were so desperate, the students, Rick Griffiths, who was the vice president of Chapman and my boss, would send me to Newport Beach to recruit students. If you had a surfboard, you got a scholarship. That's how you get on, you know that. Sorry. It was tough. Griff was the vice president of the college, and he brought me over as the senior administrator for the program at the time. And Griff was a brilliant strategist for bringing on students. And we finally decided we have to get some help. We had John Michel Cousteau down trying to put scientific equipment on. Griff went down to Sun City in Arizona and tried to find some old folks to come on the ship. And he dug up about 100 the first couple of times. We were desperate for students. And we thought, boy, this is going to be a pain with all the old-timers on. Forgive me. Now you've turned out to be probably one of the most important programs in history. So out of desperation to fill the ship, we ended up with a sterling program. Grandma and Grandpa and all the adults who join us on these voyages make a huge difference in terms of the value of this program. The problem was, we finally had a ship that was working, but Holland American Line decided that the Rheindamm wasn't adequate, and they told us they were going to discontinue our use of the Rheindamm. So we were without a ship. Griff and I were the only 2 at the time working together on the program with Ed Alderson, who was the chairman of the division of 7 Seas, and my partner going for many, many voyages. And so we were without a ship. So Griff said, get on your horse and start looking. So he sent me to American President lines. He sent me to Epiratiki lines in Greece. I went all over the world looking for a ship. And as all those who now run the program know, that ain't easy to find a ship and make it work. Couldn't find one. No one was interested in having college students on for 8 months a year and then converting it back to a passenger liner. Enter C.Y. Tung, whose picture's in the lobby. I was sitting in the office one day with Ed Aldous, and we got a call from Orient Overseas Line office in Long Beach, California. The guy's name was Sonny Pan, I'll never forget it, Chinese. And Sonny said, would you come down the ship and have dinner with C.Y. Tung? We didn't know who C.Y. Tung was, so we went down and had lunch with him. After lunch, he showed us a movie called The Energy Transport, which was a huge oiler. He had 150 ships in his fleet and over millions and millions of tonnage. We finally figured out who he was. When the meal was over, after looking at some of the ships that he showed us on film, we're doing this to each other, Ed Alderson, Ron Huntington, and I, and we're sitting there. So he took us up to a lounge and he sat down. He was explaining to us that in 1969, U Thant, the then head of the United Nations, was interested in a UN university to be placed on some country's shores. And Tung believed the ship should carry friendships and ideas as much as cargo. So he said to me, we would like to help with that UN university and put on a ship, and one of his ships specifically. I can remember it like it was yesterday. So he patted me on my knee and he said, I buy you ship. And he bought the Queen Elizabeth I. It was on the mud in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You've seen the Queen Mary in Long Beach. This was the sister ship in Florida, the Queen Elizabeth, the largest passenger ship ever built. And she was on the mud as a tourist attraction in Fort Lauderdale. He paid $3.5 million. He was going to take her back to Hong Kong and refit her for our use. That was a problem for us. There was only 400 of our kids, and he needed 2,000 on the ship. So we'd have been buried somewhere down in the bottom, God knows where, and what we would be relegated to, but we were nervous. That ship could only dock in 7 ports in the world because she was so deep. So we were scared a little bit. Anyway, Mr. Tung took her off the mud. I flew to Fort Lauderdale, watched him take it off the mud. They sailed her back to Hong Kong, and on the way down in the Caribbean, she broke down. The boilers, one of the boilers blew up. They limped into Curacao. They sent some boiler repair over from Hong Kong. They got the ship back to Hong Kong finally, and he spent $6.4 million, I believe was the figure, to refit her for use as UN University with our little program along the way. By this time, we had changed our name. Seven Seas didn't fit us, and they had had some financial problems, and we did not want to be associated with it. So in 1967, we had changed the name of the program to World Campus Afloat, Chapman College. That was a big sign to hang up on the side of the ship every time. But we were proud. We had this little campus sign that said World Campus Afloat, Chapman College, and some kids would run up there and hang it up every time we got into port. So here we were with this ship. We just couldn't do it. But we had to do it because that was our only choice. Bottom line, they refitted it, ready for sea trials, take it back to Japan for a final check. And they had a party on board for some, catered by a non-Chinese company of their own. And a mysterious fire broke out. And later on, I'll show you the Queen Elizabeth on her side in Hong Kong. I was privileged to be there and climb on her. Anyway, fire broke out. No one's quite sure how it happened. We certainly wouldn't speculate, but it was a suspicious burning. Anyway, the ship burned completely and totally. Burned for days. It was on all the international news. And I can remember Mr. Tung calling us at Chapman and was crying. And it was a sad moment because that was one of the greatest ships ever built. And to him, it was a very special opportunity to put the United Nations University on a really special vessel. But Mr. Tung was very, very serious about helping us. I remember at the end of his conversation, through his tears, he said, "Don't worry, I will find you a ship." And within, I forgot how many months now, not very many, he found American Export Line had a ship called the Atlantic. An old bucket, which you know is the ride dam. You know is the Universe. So he was in dry dock in Baltimore, so he sent me back there for, I think, about 2 months in the summer. And the first crew member I ever met was Jing Wei. Anybody remember Jing Wei? He didn't like me much, and I didn't like him much, but we finally figured out how to get along, and we survived. But I went back to Baltimore for that summer, and we tried to put her in shape. She was in very bad shape. We sailed her through the Panama Canal back to Long Beach, hoping we could sail when you guys first got on it. It was 71, wasn't it? And she was called the Universe Campus in the beginning. We changed the name to Universe simply because campus didn't make any sense, so we just crossed it off, but it was the same ship. Now, that was probably our longest usage ship. We probably, I'm guessing now, but something like 54 voyages on her. You knew her as the Great White Mother. A lot of names you gave her. But she was a good ship, and she served us so well all those years. So we're out of ship now. And All of a sudden, Chapman College, 1975, says, I'm not sure we want to continue this program. So we were without a ship for a while, now we're without a school. So Griff and I were a bit nervous, and John Timmons had sailed on one of the voyages, and I'll tell you about his in a minute. But anyway, Griff said we have to find a school. So Chapman College had a new interim president and a new board chairman, and they decided they would give the program up. You have to understand, Chapman was so instrumental in our surviving this program. They were the experimental risk takers. They deserve tons of credit. But they owned the program, which is different than today with the Institute for Shipboard Education that owns the program. We contract with the university. In those days, Chapman was both. So the risk was much greater. It bothered them quite a bit. So Chapman decided to give it up. So in 1975, so we didn't sail for a couple of voyages there. That Rick Griff had let me go and have a sabbatical, and I had a heart attack. So I came back to the campus, and they had let Griff and John go because there was no position now, because there was no ship. And John Timmons, M.A. Griffiths, whose pictures are out there very rightly, along with Mr. Tung, formed the Institute for Shipboard Education, the 501c3 that now operates the program. They moved to Irvine, California, and they set up a little crummy little shop somewhere downtown, and they took Ralph Dials and a couple of Chapman folks and made it work. So Timmons, Griffiths, and Tung really were the ones that started the Institute for Shipboard Education, deserve all the credit. A few months later, I was okay from my heart attack, and Griff and John wanted me back. So I rejoined them as chief academic officer, and we had no school. But we had a guy named John Halloway on the ship. He was a lawyer for the University of Colorado. He had sailed on a ship. I knew him well because I had a business in Colorado. And so we were able to have him help us, and he snuck us into the University of Colorado. He snuck us in through continuing education, which was our first mistake. Nobody ever heard of us in continuing education, so it wasn't their fault. People think CU didn't like us. They liked us. They served us well for 3 years, 77 to 1980. Good school, and they really legitimized us, and we were so thankful they took us on. So we started back sailing in 77, under the auspices of the University of Colorado through their continuing education division. That made them less aware of the program and the value of the program. The mainstream people at the University of Colorado never really got to see the value, except the faculty we sailed with. At this time, C.Y. Tung dies. 1973, C.Y. Tung died. Let me make sure I have my right date. We're still the three leading guys for the program, and Griff sent me around the world again and said, find a school. Well, I went to University of Hawaii, East-West Center, I went to Evergreen State, I went to Colorado State University, University of Denver. Couldn't find anybody who wanted anything to do with us, because CU had given it up. We were kind of stuck. However, we had a friend at the University of Pittsburgh. His name was Paul Masoner. Paul was the head of the University Center for International Studies. He knew C.Y. Tung from a previous organization with whom he'd worked. So he invited us back, and Griff and I went back there. Lo and behold, the chancellor was a guy named Wes Posfar. Wes was a West Pointer. I knew him at the Air Force Academy because they have a chair for him now at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Political Science. He was the longest standing chancellor at the time. And Posfar was fascinated by this concept. He used to call me the Admiral. He'd call me up and say, Admiral, get over here. But he liked the concept. But the thing we did right at the University of Pittsburgh, right, went into the president. He supported us. Together, and we backed off. We had it all in control of the academic program. We had made some mistakes in CU, but he controlled some of the academic aspects. We had the committee, all the academic. We had 25 universities. University of Pittsburgh. We were there from 1980 John Timmons became the head of the program from Dr. Griffiths, and Les McCabe had been his friend and shipmate on a voyage, and Les became the major player with John, and they began to see what they're going to do post-Pittsburgh. I'll leave most of the after Pittsburgh to Les, so you'll hear from this afternoon, but I would like to say at least this one. We had two other ships we used in the summer, because when we got on the Universe Explorer, in the old days, we had the Chinese ran a special program called World Explorer Cruises in the summer to Alaska, to keep the Atlantic. Most people were right there. At that point, we didn't have that, so we rented a couple of Greek ships for the Odessas, World Renaissance, and a couple of summers. They were able to keep it going. After Pittsburgh, it became difficult. Again, on the university, okay, we were hoping to get it here. Certainly, the country has made opportunities, very good institutions. Chapman, many good schools, that might be made to stay on the East Coast and join I'd like to read the story and say something about it. The same as it opened. When Chapman first took it on, they had a very clear vision. They believed what a friend of ours, Dr. Harold Denver, had written years ago. The reality of interdependence is enormous, and you must prepare students for this reality, or in fact you will miseducate them. And there is no neutrality. So with no neutrality, either you prepare students for the interdependence of the world, or you in fact miseducate them. That was the guiding principle that we started at Chapman, and it's no different today. Programs are different, many things change, we reflect whatever's going on in American universities. But in fact, it's the same concept with the same importance that it had in the beginning. Chapman really ultimately wanted to have one student per school. That was the idea, and they wanted to offer the program to all of higher education, to any student in good standing at a decent university to join us, because many schools could not operate a ship. And to this day, we still try to stay loyal to that basic understanding. We're an entrepreneurial program. We had to take risks. Careful risks, but we took risks. We are entrepreneurial. But the reason that I have so much respect for Dr. McCabe and his team is they've moved us from an entrepreneurial program to a very professional organization. I've never seen anything better than the way they run it now. It's very impressive. And so I would say we went from experimental and entrepreneurial to a very professional organization, which ISC has become. And I'm so proud they let me even show up once in a while and be a part of it. Chapman deserves credit because they were experimental. CU saved our butts and gave us a national presence. Pitt was a stalwart, solid citizen for 25 years, thank God for it. And now the University of Virginia, we hope, will take it to heights that no one has even seen. Let me just tell you this. Semester AC is so complicated, you have no idea. I know you think you know it all, but believe me, it is the most complicated enterprise I have ever seen. Here you have a not-for-profit organization, the Institute, registered in the state of Delaware, working with a major university and all the complexity and bureaucracy of the university, owning a ship that cost you $50,000 plus a day. You're trying to buy oil futures. You're trying to figure out how to get at least 600 plus persons on every single voyage, year in and year out, 360 days a year, to even make your budgets. And on top of all that, you have 6,000 plus alums you're trying to take care of. Think how much work just this voyage took compared to all the others we have to run. It's extremely complicated. On top of that, we hire V-ships, a very good shipping operating company, probably the biggest in the world. Jim's on board now. They operate the vessel for us. So we have to make decisions, Les and his team, Sal in particular, they have to make decisions all the time between macaroni and machinery. It's a very difficult thing to do. For me, and the Institute for Shipboard Education probably has 50 plus people in its input. Now that's a miracle. I'm amazed. So I guess what I'd like to say is I believe they deserve our respect, our help, and our participation. Remember, anything great is cumulative and participatory. Everyone has made a difference in the development of this program, but we need full participation. Dr. McCabe, I have great respect for his team, and I have nothing to say except that I stand tall in their name, and I believe that the next 50 years will even be more exciting. Now let me just say this. Communicating Corps course, all those young kids going back to be leaders in their countries, you can change the world. Who knows what 50 years from now would bring? I say to you, it's in your hands. There is no program on earth, not one. Its alumni is more important to its future than semester at sea. I'd like to end with just doing 3 fun things today, if you will. I'd like to just say this. In my lifetime, I've been granted lots of accolades, and Barrett and Lee said as much as he did. I'm appreciative of all the honors that I've been honored to receive. But I'll tell you this, at the end of the day, at the end of my life, I'm 75 years old, I'm an old man. I won't last much longer, but I'll tell you this, of all the titles that I've been given, I would never be more proud of the one alumni as good C. Now let me just say a couple of things. I'm working on one final book in my lifetime. It's called It Ain't So Bad. I'm trying to say to college kids, don't look at the news, don't read the press. The world's not that bad. I promise you, for the young people in this room, for every one thing that's evil in the world, there are 100 great things. I guarantee you, I've slept and been with the people in the world. Most things are magnificent. So don't listen to the news and get discouraged. Just get out and get it done like all young people have always done. I'd like to just read something I wrote last week and gave it at a talk at a major university in Colorado. This is what I think of you who are young. You're a little naive, but you're caring, respectful. You enjoy those of us that are more seasoned, and you're interested in making a difference, even if you don't know how yet. You face extraordinary challenges: control of nuclear power, terror, a growing underclass in the world, a wave of technology that would choke a horse, and a multitude of personal choices and temptations that I never faced as a young person. Besides, all of your time is being challenged by everyone to get your attention so that you can compete for whatever they believe in a world that is closing in on you. It's closing in on you, affecting your economy, your environment, your jobs, and even your food. And yet I believe you are ready, understand the issues, and more importantly, are willing to face it all. I believe today the young people develop into one university, the University of the Young. I believe that young people have a greater vested interest in each other, even more than their own governments. I taught a course on ethical leadership a year or so ago, and I asked the kids to write the 25 most important issues that would affect their lives. And I argued that would any of these be solved without international cooperation among the young? And to the last student, no. So I believe the students are ready. I think they understand the international implications, and semester at sea is their first step toward what I'm describing. My faith in the young is absolute. I hope yours is too. Now, just for a little smile, I have a couple slides I grabbed as I went out the door. I have no idea what I grabbed, but you're going to see them. Remember Whiskey Wong?